Hi, friends, and welcome to Searching for Answers. This time we are marching toward Zion and all holding hands together with those who have gone before. Right in the middle of the Epistle to the Hebrews, chapter 11, past the middle actually now, aren't we? As that great faith chapter reaches its climax, we'll be discussing that right now as we ask ourselves what it means to really walk by faith. Joining the conversation on this occasion, Dr. Bernard Taylor, Old Testament scholar, Loma Linda University and University Church. Dr. William Johnson, now retired, but editor of the Adventist Review and Herald, the Adventist Review. And prior to that, professor of New Testament studies at Seventh-day Adventist Theological Seminary at Andrews University. Pastor Beverly Maravilla, who is also a teacher as well, on the pastoral staff at the La Sierra University Church, particularly in family and children's ministries. Dr. Leo Rancelin, a New Testament scholar who is Associate Dean of the faculty in the School of Religion at Loma Linda University, and who really knows his Greek well as well. So we're grateful for that kind of expertise and background. My name is John Jones. I'm at La Sierra University in the HMS Richards Divinity School. Grab your Bibles, whatever version or translation, and get them open to Hebrews, and here we go. Dr. Taylor, the catalog, it's more than a catalog. The recounting, the drumbeat has picked up now, hasn't it? All of these people, we are stunned. Wandering, in deserts and mountains. The world is not worthy of such people. And we say amen when we read that, don't we? We think, yes, that's right. Now the question is, am I such a person? Or am I worthy of the world in turn or something? Start us off, if you will, in chapter 11 of Hebrews with verse 39, and we'll remind ourselves that the chapter breaks actually came much later than when this was originally written. So we'll take this as a paragraph that runs down from 39 of 11 of Hebrews right on down into what we call chapter 12 for the first 2 or 3 verses. Let's read that as a chunk because it rounds off where this author is headed, and then we'll see what we can make of it.
Good. Yet all these, though they were commended for their faith, did not receive what was promised, since God had provided something better, so that they would not, apart from us, be made perfect. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for the sake of the joy that was set before him endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God.
Yeah, so it all comes down to Jesus. And through him to us.
Yeah.
Other aspects of that strike you as you take us through it.
The one thing that captivates me is the first word of verse 39, yet.
Yeah.
In the light of all that was said, all these examples, and all of what has been accomplished, without denigrating it, it says yet. Yet all these, though they were commended for their faith, did not receive what was promised. Is God faithful? How could this be? Since God had provided something better so that they would not, apart from us, be made perfect. And the congregation says, wow, there's a place for us after all.
And a decisive place.
And yes, a decisive place. That is a remarkable turn of expression in the outpouring of this sermon. And what comes next, of course, we will come to, but not denigrating that at all, just seeing that turn.
Yeah.
This is a consummate
Yeah.
speaker, writer. The thought that went into this early in the Christian church shows the sharpening of ideas, the work of the Spirit at Pentecost that is guiding in what is said, how it's said, and spending all of this time and ink and, first of all, papyrus, parchment would have come later, that these people would be kept within the fold.
Yeah.
This pastoral heart that is expressed so wonderfully.
Yeah. They've really been thinking about this. I not only this speaker writer, but I think these congregations, as you've indicated, thinking, who are we? Who are our predecessors? How do we fit in the picture? And this, in a way, hooks back, doesn't it, into chapter 4. There still remains a Sabbath rest. Remember that?
That's right.
And it's not fully attained, and it depends on us.
Right.
It's our turn now.
Right.
In a way, this is saying the same thing. Hey, people, it's our turn now.
Right.
And we're surrounded with this cloud of witnesses, and they do not arrive. They do not complete apart from us. So we not only join the procession, so to speak.
Right.
We're the hinge of history in some way. Isn't that interesting?
We all go into the kingdom together.
We all go in there.
Yeah. It's such an interesting thought. One that we really don't hear expressed all that frequently.
Yeah.
I'm struck by how up to date this message is. You know, how up to date. See, even in those days, back in the first century, there was concern that Jesus hadn't come. Already. We know that because in Paul's letters in particular, some are giving up hope. So it's a concern. But what a message now for people who are getting weary in the way. It seems long, and here we are 2,000 years along. But it's the same message. And it's the same need they had, we had. Faithfulness, endurance, keeping on, keeping on.
It introduces accountability in a remarkable way.
Oh yeah.
Because not only do you have your life to live, it's intrinsically now bound up with us. And if you leave, you change the equation in remarkable ways that you could easily overlook, except now you have the opportunity to understand and to see.
So, Beverly, what do we say to church members, marginal church members, people who are not at all church members? Hey, it's not my thing. It's not me. I've got my life to live. I've got the mortgage to pay. And my family, and that's it.
Yeah, I think it's actually just as Dr. Taylor was mentioning. This is, it's a communal experience, and our individual experience isn't absent of the rest of the communities. And this is a moment of accountability. I think it calls for those of us who find ourselves more grounded in the church to continue to look around us for maybe those who might identify more marginalized, and to say, we literally can't keep going if you don't come with us. There is that, and then I do think there is a moment where we can look back and say, for whatever reason we found that we needed to pack our stuff up and leave, maybe we need to turn back and reconsider unpacking and going, we have a role, not just historically, but also at present in the movement of the church, and how now we have to look at if we aren't a part of this, how then does the church continue? And even in our sense of feeling disjointed or feeling as if we're not matched idealistically to what we think the entire body of the church could be talking about, that as a community, it's significant for even our doubt to be a part of the development of faith and for the growth of a community. Even doubt has a place in all of this. I mean, look at all of the characters that we had talked about before. Each of these characters had a moment of, I don't know what I'm doing here. Maybe this is not for me. And looking back and going, but it is not the extraordinary. It's the common people.
Right.
So in each of our experience, we say, the mortgage has to be paid, and that is good. And yet there's a faithful God who has made it so all of these people have continued, all of these details of our lives have also been met. And here's something greater. If we can attend to the greater picture, then it's not just about your mortgage, it's actually about our mortgage as a community. How do we sustain each other, right? This is the book of Acts, right? Going back and pouring into the pot, everybody being able to be more aware of their community. So I do think it's that accountability on both sides. As we're resentful, sometimes it's an individual experience, sometimes it's a communal experience, feeling however it is that we've become marginalized or feeling outside of what the greater group is doing. So this does make us think, but I also think it's really hopeful too. If you've walked away, this is a tap on the shoulder.
Yeah.
You can look back now. There might be something that's calling you back. This is a tap on the shoulder, and for that tap on the shoulder, if you can think about it, is Jesus going? I'm not done yet. Where are you going? There's so much more.
Yeah, well said. So, Leo, here is Jesus.
Can I just say one thing before we get to Jesus?
Sure.
And I don't want ever. But verse 39 and 40. So as we move now to chapter 12, let us just pause and say, wow, all these images of hardship and suffering and persecution and imprisonment, they've all piled up to encourage these readers to be steadfast, to have the kind of persevering faith that they need. That's just remarkable. And then to say, they did not receive the promise, right? They didn't. And so, but he says, now wait a minute. You, this generation right now, who, as he said in chapter 1, you're living in the last days, right? You're living just prior to, as he says, the day is drawing near. Jesus is coming soon. That's what he said. And so you who live in the last days live in a privileged time. The Messianic era has arrived. And so I'm puzzled by verse 40 because, again, here reading literally, you could translate it since God, and this participle could be foresaw or provided something better, and it's perichemon, for us, right? The emphasis upon this generation, this audience, so that without us, they would not be made perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
He draws such a strong connection between his audience, these house churches, which I think are in Rome, and these previous generations. They need us, right, to bring, in some sense, God's redemptive and salvific purposes to fulfillment.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think you hit the nail right on the head there. Now we can begin to see why both Abraham and Moses, as well as all the others, but are explicit in Abraham and Moses, are set up as seeing beyond and sacrificing what was the immediate enticement, right?
Yeah.
Because Jesus does the same. The pioneer, 12:2, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, for the sake of the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, disregarding the shame or dismissing the shame. This really puts him on the same axis, doesn't it, with Abraham, Moses, and of course all the others.
And so, John, I like how you've put 39 and 40 together with 1 and 2. Because in many ways, now that he's talked about these heroes of faith, here comes the ultimate example and model and paradigm, the one who endured the cross, despising the shame.
And in 40, to be made perfect can be translated as to reach the goal.
Yeah.
And we move into an analogy of running a race. And this is not, it's completing the race. This is not, you know, running the Chicago Marathon or something, being first.
Right.
But holding back and making sure everybody finishes it.
Right.
It's good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that corporate idea comes out again in 12, and he's headed somewhere with this, isn't he? We're going to get it. The question of the cross, he endured the cross. The word can mean almost something like not only disregarding, but dismissing, or almost even scorning, looking down on the shame. Yeah, that's nothing.
Yeah.
He's not hung up about the kind of humiliation involved.
Despising the shame. Yeah.
King James. Which, again, I think is a message to the readers of that day. Oh, we wouldn't, because, you know, the Roman Empire was a very status-conscious society. Anyone who spends a little time digging into that cultural context sees just how heavily laden and it all was with power and status and prestige and who ranks where and who invites whom to their home and all the rest. It was a big deal. All the signs and symbols of power, and everybody was scrambling, everybody, right down to the lowest. Everybody was trying to climb that ladder and establish themselves in some way. Christianity really is out of step with that. It's just offbeat with that.
Exactly.
And might have been reason enough, just that, in an honor-shame society, right? For many people to scorn Christianity. The authors who attacked Christianity in the Roman Empire of the day attacked it much on that ground. These are such low-class people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we just, why would anyone be attracted to that? For that reason alone. They're just such unworthy types. And yet we've been told the world wasn't worthy of them. An interesting contrast, isn't it?
It's a counterintuitive.
So, right. So I think this sentence here in 12:2 of Jesus scorning the humiliation is a real barb, or if not that, at least a goad to the readers in that day, and by contrast, by implication, to us today. Does that
Absolutely.
Yeah.
work?
John, in connection with what you were just saying, I think of words of the pagan critic Celsus, a bit later in the next century.
Yeah.
He said, what a singular people these Christians are. I'm paraphrasing. What a singular teacher they have. All other teachers say, come to me, you who are clean and worthy. But this hopeless person, he says, come to me, you who are down and beaten by life. And so says Celsus, he's followed about by the ragtag and bobtail of humanity. This is the way the pagan, and just exactly what you were saying, looking down on the Christians,
Well, Paul himself in Corinthians can call them the gutter sweepings of the society. So,
but of whom the world was not
but of whom the world was not worthy. Here is the mystery and the power of it all. It's finally, because they wind up saying, look how those Christians love one another and how they love others.
John, there's an interesting point here. I want to make a big deal about it. In verse 2 there, where who for the joy set before him. The preposition is anti, which can be translated for as here, or as instead of. Okay.
Right.
So there are two different ways of seeing this.
Right.
Jesus saw the joy there was going to be, and so he despised the shame. Or, instead of the joy
Of this world.
of this world.
Yeah.
It's a minority opinion, probably, but I incline toward the latter instead of rather than.
Yeah.
Not a big deal, but interesting.
Yeah, rather than the seductive joys
That's
of
right.
Islam. Right.
Is this paralleling Moses? Back
Yeah.
in chapter
Yes.
11?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm largely influenced by that. Yeah.
And yet so many times the unseen, the promises before
Yes.
us
Yes.
is also set through, perhaps it's not either or, it's both and.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to say something about to run the race set
Yeah.
before us.
For
right?
sure.
Yeah.
Well, before that, who's watching? Who's the great cloud of witnesses?
Right.
Surely
Is that
it's all,
chapter 11?
Isn't it all those people in chapter 11?
I think it's chapter 11.
Yeah, I do
Yeah,
too.
it's not angels. No, it's.
Therefore.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I tell a story about what is called the greatest, maybe the greatest race of the 20th century? You ever heard about that one? I used to run 100 years ago, you know, not fast, but I used to run. And so this story really interests me. You know, for years and years and years, runners had the goal of running a mile in 4 minutes.
Yes.
And they came closer and closer and closer,
Yeah.
couldn't crack it. For years, they could not crack it. And then one man did it, Roger Bannister, a medical student in England. And shortly afterwards, down in Australia, John Landy, a school teacher.
Yep.
So only 2 men in the world had run a mile in less than 4 minutes. So people said, wouldn't it be great if these guys could compete? Well, there was going to be a meet in Vancouver later that year. Both were selected by their countries. There were other runners, but this was the big race. I was not there, but I've seen a movie of this. It runs for just 4 minutes. Landy was an unusual runner because he always would start fast and he'd always be in front and no one would ever catch him. You know, usually runners will hold back a bit.
Yeah.
So on this day, you know, the other runners were there, but they might as well have stayed home. They were not literally in the race. Okay? So it's Landy and Bannister. Landy's in front. He's always in front. Every race he's in front, right to the end. And you see on the movie Bannister coming up closer and closer and closer, and the crowd roaring louder and louder and louder. And just before the tape, Landy looks back. And Bannister passes him on the other side and beats him. Both broke the 4 minutes.
Broke the 4 minutes.
New records. But Bannister won because Landy looked back. So I've often thought about that, and it's really one of my favorite preaching passages.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, 1 and 2, you know, the race of life.
Yeah.
Don't look back.
Yeah.
Don't look around. Don't even look at ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eyes fixed on Jesus. He's there at the tape.
Leo, I derailed you. Your turn.
No, I was just going to say, you started we've got to say something about the race, because surely all of us have spoken to, we've got friends who run marathons, and I've been so impressed with how they discipline themselves for months prior to the race in terms of what they eat and how much exercise. And then the day finally arrives, and there's just this ruthless commitment to being focused with perseverance on the race set before them if they're to succeed and run a full marathon. And I think, seems to me, those motifs are percolating here, where this author says to do such a thing, which again highlights the Christian walk as a pilgrimage, a journey, a race to the heavenly Jerusalem.
And more a marathon than a sprint.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, by this point in history, yes, but nonetheless a race. But it's a race, as we've noted already, in which we kind of hold hands with one another, isn't it?
And everyone who finishes is a winner.
Is a winner, yeah, right.
The finish is to win.
So then he takes his seat in glory at the right hand of the throne of God.
Right.
And again, the implication is that all of this great cloud of witnesses, ultimately, including us, if we're faithful, take our seat in glory.
Yeah, that's right. Could I ask an interesting question?
Yeah.
Here we have Jesus, who has run the race before us. Okay? Are we called to follow his example, or is the call to trust what he has done? Significant point theologically. Do what he has done, or trust what he has done? I
So
threw out
there's
the
a race
question.
to run.
What's that?
Yeah,
There is a race to run.
exactly.
There is a race to run.
Yeah.
But yeah, his race or our race? That's your question.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, he is both the pioneer, his race, and perfecter of our faith.
Yeah.
Our race we run with him as well. This is not something we do on our own, obviously. He is the actor, the perfecter, right? Right?
But I think in the terms the question is asked, it's the second.
Trust what he has done.
Trust.
Trust what he has
he's
done and run our race
Yeah, looking to him.
looking to him.
Yeah.
And later on, there's a refocus here
Yeah.
in the race. Refocus. Don't lose your focus.
Yeah.
Run the race.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question, and I incline toward the latter. I'm especially influenced by the Gospels.
Yeah.
You know, Jesus is example, but that is not the emphasis that is given in the Gospels. He's Savior before he is example. Okay.
Yes.
There's very little about Jesus as our example through the New Testament. Only in specific instances, you know, in certain situations in life.
That's right. And
Otherwise, you see, it's very different. You know, it's so focused on Jesus and his grace and the salvation that he has won for us.
Actually, as some of our viewers will recognize, you are referencing two theories of salvation, of what Christ did on the cross. Whether it was a sacrifice, or to be understood as a sacrifice or as a moral influence in our lives. And the answer apparently is yes and yes, their validity.
Right.
Leo, we're down to a minute. You want to round us off a little here?
I just come back to verse 2, you know, fix your eyes on Jesus, the pioneer. And this word, you know, archegon, is so rich, author, source, and perfecter of our faith. There's so much there that he brings to our persevering faith and our journey to the heavenly city. I mean, to me, what gets highlighted in 11 and now in 12 is faith being robust, dynamic, an act, right? And I need to follow in the footsteps of Jesus. That's what gets underscored for me.
So here we are. From here on out, the book is going to be about us following Jesus. The focus shifts once again, and it's a focus that we'll carry forward as we continue next time, searching for answers.